Welcome back to another episode of Making Money with Woodworking and Smalls That Sell. And in today's video, we're going to be covering some evergreen items that will sell year-round. And we'll also be hitting on some creative finishing techniques that will make your projects stand out from the rest. And if you're new to the series and you're wondering what this is all about, it's about what's hot and trending at the big box stores, breaking these down so we can put our own twist to it and build these at home. And all of these will be low-cost, high-profit items that pretty much anyone can build. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into this first one. It's this super cool little toddler / child's bench. But what was interesting about this build is their marketing style. They are using a sales tactic here that allows them to inflate the price tremendously. This very small bench is $287, and how are they getting that kind of a price? It's because they're marketing it as Amish made. And yes, that is a 100% sales tactic. Whenever people hear that something is Amish made, they automatically assume that it's higher quality and they know that it's not imported. But you can use the same type of marketing technique. No, you can't say it's Amish made unless you're Amish, which in that case you shouldn't be watching this. I should better watch what I say about the Amish. I think there was some show on about the Amish Mafia or something like that, but anyway, what you can use and should be using is that your items are handcrafted, handmade. Really focus on pushing the quality of your product. Solid wood, reclaimed if you're using reclaimed wood. Regardless of how you word it, you want to get the point across that this is quality and that it's not imported junk. All right, so let's go ahead and start breaking down this child's bench. So this bench is 8 inches wide, 24 inches long, and only 12 inches tall. So obviously it's made for a little one. Now they are mass producing these things, so those are kind of some odd measurements. So if I were going to be making this out of material that I could easily get my hands on, I'd use a 1x10 pine board, which are currently right around 13 bucks. The crazy thing is you can pick up a 2x10 for $8.80 right now. So you may want to put a bit of a chunkier style of a twist to this and use a 2x10. Let's say we go with a 1x10, which will actually be 9¼ inches wide. For the seat for this, we're going to simply cut that board down to 24 inches long. Now, if you look at the edges of theirs, they didn't use a solid wood board for this. The seat itself, that's plywood. So apparently, even the Amish use plywood. Hope I'm not giving away any secrets and I get a Amish Mafia knock at the door. We'll see. But ours is going to be a solid wood bench top. We have it cut to 24 inches. And let's make sure to round over the edges. Obviously, this is going to be made for little ones, so we do not want anything that they can get hurt on. So I would take a jigsaw, round over these corners, and make sure that it's sanded well so they don't get any splinters or anything like that. And then we go down to our legs, and you're probably wondering why is there not any type of spacers or anything like that in there for extra support? Well, it's because this thing is only 12 inches tall. So for these legs, we want these inset a little bit. You notice how the apron has just a little bit of a hangover there? We have to account for the thickness of the apron on both sides. So if our bench top is 9¼ inches wide, then we need these legs to be 7¼ So I've cut 2 more boards off of our 1x10 that are 12 inches long, or if you really want to stick with this exact 12 inches, 11¼ with a 3/4 inch top. Then you'll just simply rip that down to 7¼ By the time that we get done with this, we'll have about 1/4 inch of overhang on each side. So after your legs are cut to length, let's go ahead and add this little V design at the bottom. It's only going to be about 3 inches up from the bottom. So what I would do is to mark that 3-inch mark in the very center of your board. Then at the very bottom of the board, measure in about 1.5 inches on each side, make a mark, and then just connect your points, making this upside down V shape. Cut it out with a jigsaw and you have this primitive bench look. Now, as far as attaching this to our top, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can use little corner brackets on the bottom of each one of these. These legs, again, they're only 12 inches tall. But personally, what I would do is to measure 4 inches from each end of our bench top, and from that point, pre-drill and counterbore for 2 equally spaced screws. Then I would use some wood glue. Go ahead and attach these legs to the top using our screws, and then finish that off by filling the rest of our counterbore up with some dowels, giving it that nice dowel joinery look, kind of like what they did for the sides or the aprons. So speaking of these aprons, based on the dimensions of everything else, they're only going to be about 2.5 inches wide. So back to what's left of our 1x10, let's cut off 22 inches, head over to the table saw, rip that down into a couple of 2.5-inch boards, then put 45-degree miters on each end. Again, once you get this cut, make sure to sand every corner over. Then to install the aprons, it looks like that they have just counterbored and used a screw and dowel on each side of the board to attach it to the legs. But these aprons are there to tie everything together and to provide support, but there has to be something underneath of this that is attaching it to the top. Again, you can use brackets or screws with dowels from the top, but personally I would install some pocket holes in the back to attach it to the top, and then use the screws and the dowel caps to attach it to the legs. And that's pretty much all that there is to making this. Not like anything else, you should offer this in various styles and colors, but what makes this an evergreen item and increases the potential for selling these is the fact that it's made for kids. You know yourself that especially grandparents will spend money on their grandchildren that they didn't spend on you. Now, will they spend $287? Well, obviously they will, or they wouldn't be selling these things the way that they are. But for me, given the simplicity and the profit margins of this build, I would give them a little break at about $100. All right, so for this next one, they're marketing it as a wooded divided toolbox. Okay, so I've seen a lot of old wooden toolboxes. They're typically a little bit larger than this, but it is what it is, and it's still super cool. And obviously people are loving them or they wouldn't be on the trending list. Now, you can pretty much make these about any dimensions that you like, but this one is 24 inches long. It's 5.5 inches tall on the box area there. And then for the sides, those are 14 inches tall. So all the parts for these could be cut with any material that's 5.5 inches wide. So we can use fence picket material, we can use pallet wood, or we can just get a 1x6, which is 5.5 inches wide. Regardless of what you decide to use, the parts are going to be the same. So let's start with the bottom and work our way up. The bottom itself will be 5.5 inches wide. If you notice, the sides are actually stacked on top of the bottom, so it means that it's the same width as the end boards. So the bottom board needs to be cut at about 22.5 inches long. And then for our sides, we'll be using the exact same material and the exact same length. So I have 3 boards that are 22.5 inches long. I'd go ahead and attach my sides to the bottom at this point. And for that, I would just use some wood glue and install some brad nails through the bottom board. Then I would go ahead and install my spacers that make up each one of these compartments. They have 4 different compartments. You can put in as many as you want, but the compartment dividers are the same width as our board. If you're using 3/4 inch material, each one of these dividers will need to be 4 inches long. Again, I would just install these using some wood glue and some brad nails. So now the box part of this build is pretty much done. So let's move on to our ends. For these end boards, we'll be using the exact same material. It's going to be 5.5 inches wide, and we're going to cut these at 14 inches long. You'll be needing 2 of those, and then you'll just cut this bottle looking shape at the top. So you're going to have a square edge about 2/3 of the way up. Then you'll just kind of arch into a center point, and then back down to your other side. We've gone over some super easy ways to make these arches in previous videos, but honestly, for something like this that is supposed to look like primitive Americana, you can just freehand this, because I can guarantee you back in the day, whenever they were actually making these things, they did not spend a ton of time making perfect arches for something that they were going to be using to carry their tools. But once you get that marked out the way that you would like it, take a jigsaw, cut your first one out, clean that up, then use that first plate as a template for your second one. Once you have both of those cut out, just put some wood glue on both ends of your box and slap in some brad nails from the ends. If you wanted to make this super sturdy, you could always use screws or dowels in the place of the brad nails. So the only thing that we have left is this handle. What kind of looks like that it's an oval shaped handle. But that's all that they have done, is taken the exact same material that they've been working with. Let's say that it's 3/4 of an inch thick. They've ripped down a board to about 1.5 inches wide by 22.5 inches long. Just simply round it over all 4 of the sharp corners. And you can quickly do this with a knife, hand plane, or a sander. It's up to you. But once you get your handle the way that you want it, we'll just slide it down in between our 2 ends. And this is where I would add the extra support, because the handle is what everyone is going to be lifting everything from. So I definitely use wood glue and screws. You can either cover your screws by counterboring and using some dowel, or if you didn't want to use screws at all, you could just drill a hole through each end into your handle and just use dowel rod as your joinery and wood glue. Again, whatever works for you. Then once the handle's installed, next comes the creative part. They offer several different color options. Some of these have been stained or lightly torched, but this red one, they've actually stained the wood that's underneath, put a red coat of paint on top, then lightly hit it with a sander to make this worn look. These things are going to look awesome pretty much any way that you do it, but whenever you go to market these things, again, staging is going to be key, and I would honestly stage these up for whatever season that you're in and get creative with this. So if it's in the spring, you want to do some staging with flowers and things like that. But how about adding some garden tools to this? Actually make it a functional piece that somebody can buy. Now, if it's the summer, I'm picturing this thing with napkins, forks, salt and pepper, things like that for outdoor gatherings or picnics. Then if it's the fall, I would stage this up with maybe some marshmallow, graham crackers, and chocolate bars. The sky's the limit for ideas for staging these things, but the more creative that you can get will give people ideas that they didn't think of. So just like those things that I just mentioned, now it's not just a decoration through your customer's eyes. You can actually see all of the different things that it can be used for. And that is how you get $50 out of something that you only have around 5 in. Okay, so for this next one, I actually found several different styles of these that ranged anywhere from $60 to $100 for a set of 4. And that's going to be what they are calling wall planters. Okay, so this is not an actual planter. It's what's considered a dry planter. So really it's just made for dry flowers or artificial flowers. Okay, so these things are really neat. I honestly really like these. And the best part about it is that they are simple to build. So obviously these look like sections of 2x4 just hanging on the wall. And essentially that's what it is, just slightly modified. Now this wood actually looks like reclaimed 2x4 material, but you could get this look using new wood and some staining. Okay, so I'm gonna bust this company out just a little bit and show you something that you should not do. Okay, so I want you to check out this one planter. Look at the board that they've used on the front. You notice that it has these little dark spots that are going across the ends of the grain. That is caused from a planer that is not set up correctly, and we call that in-knit. It is a defect. Do not send any of your products out knowing that you have an obvious defect on one of the faces. So whoever staged this up, kind of dropped the ball on that one. Okay, so let's move on. I just could not pass up a teaching moment there. So each one of these are built exactly the same. They're 12 inches long and they're made out of 2x4s. Now the actual width of each one of these are only about 3 inches. So that tells me that they have removed a 1/4 of an inch from each side before they remove the material for the front and the back. And essentially what we're going to be doing is taking our 2x4 and making it look like we've just removed the middle. So we'll just start off by removing a 1/4 of an inch from each side. Then we'll turn the 2x4 on its edge and then remove a 1/4 of an inch from the front and the back. Now for the sides, we're going to have to make one more cut so that we can sandwich that in between the front and the back. We need to rip our sideboards down to 1 inch. So if you're using material that has rounded over edges, I'd remove a 1/4 of an inch from each side. That way you have nice square pieces for glue up. And honestly, that's pretty much all that you have left. I would just lay the back on a flat surface, glue up my side edges, line those up with the edge of my back, add some glue to the top, and place my top board. Now if you wanted a super clean look, I would just clamp this up and not put any nails in it. It's going to be hanging on a wall and really not supporting any kind of weight. Or if you wanted to mass produce these things, you could use some brad nails, or you could stagger your wood glue kind of like a line of dashes, and in between each one of those just put some CA glue. The CA glue would pretty much dry instantly, locking everything together and acting like a clamp. And then the only other thing left to do would be to finish this, so either paint or stain, and then add a way to hang these. And they have just used these little picture frame sawtooth hangers. And just like that, you have taken half of a 2x4, so right around $2 in material, and turned it into something that the big box stores are selling for $50 to $100. Now for things like these, I would set my pricing based on the material that I've used and also doing some testing in my market area. Okay, so again, this next one, I'm seeing these things everywhere and I'm loving it because they can all be made out of scrap wood. And that's these dry vases. So similar to the wall planters, these things are made for dried or artificial flowers. But check out some of these different designs. I'm sitting here looking at some of these and I'm thinking, I know that I have thrown away some of this odd shaped material. Well, now we have something that we can use that odd shaped material for. And if your material doesn't have an odd enough shape, cut a hole in it or a U-shape in it like this one. So the whole selling point behind these dry vases is the fact that they are unique, and in a lot of cases, no two will be the same. And again, you can pretty much use any type of material that you would like. But in order for these to stand to be pretty stable, I would at least say that the material needs to be 1 inch wide, and you just simply drill a hole in the middle of it. So for these, I would sand very well and apply a nice finish, because ultimately you're going for this functional art look. Now honestly, these things are awesome, and I'd have them in my house. And if you don't have a bunch of scrap hardwoods laying around, another design that you can use is very similar to our wall planters that we just covered. Check these out. So to make these, you would use the exact same process that you did for the wall planters, and what is selling these is the finish. So this is a unique style of finishing where you're highlighting the grain with paint. You're not trying to make this look old, you're trying to highlight the softwood grain pattern, making this contrast. And that's exactly what I did with this 2x4. Now the actual design that it leaves is going to depend on the grain itself. So if you notice their grain is really wide. So this is more of a flat sawn board. You just pick out material with wider, flatter grain. Whereas mine was a lot tighter grain, so the whites don't show as much. But the process of getting this look is the same regardless, so let me show you how they did it. So they're actually advertising this as a burnt wood dry vase. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to take a torch to my material. And what this process does is to char the softwoods. So why do we need this softwoods charred? Well, we do this so we can easily remove this material with a wire brush or a wire wheel. And by doing that, we are creating depth. And that depth is the key for getting this look. So once we've removed the charred material, next we'll just clean this off and apply some paint. And even with this process, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. If you want kind of a dull look, you'll let this dry, and then you can lightly hit it with a sander, or you can hand sand this, leaving the white paint to just cover the soft woods. Or if you'd like a brighter look, you could actually paint this and then immediately wipe off the paint, making sure not to get into your grooves. Regardless of how you do it, you end up with a super cool look. And you could do this with any color that you would like. It's a little finishing techniques like that where people are wondering, well, how did they get this to look like that? It's actually what's going to set your products apart from the rest. Okay, so for this last one, I cannot help it. I have to give the old PB just a little bit of a hard time, even though that they are marketing geniuses, because they can sell this for $400. This is a wooden vine on a stand. Like, that's the name, for $400. You know what I have outside of my shop? Some vines. So let's find us a very expensive vine. There has to be millions of dollars in vines out here. And there we have it. We have this one-of-a-kind, super rare peach vine art straight from the peach farm. And it could be yours today for the low, low price of $400. It's actually pretty cool. Okay, so I totally did this to make fun of the PB. I made this thing and I kind of like it now. So I guess I've spent way too much time on the old PB's site and they have gotten into my head. Either way, it turned out pretty cool, and as something that was meant to be a joke, I'm probably going to keep it. So all jokes aside, that is why the old PB does as well as they do, is because they can take just about anything, put a creative twist to it, and sell it. And that is the name of the game, is to look at things in a different way, a different creative way, and make it your own. So if you've seen anything in this video or any of my previous videos that you would like to make, maybe except for the vine thingy, but you're just not sure where to start or comfortable with certain tools, make sure to check out my woodworking kickstart course from novice to natural. Even if you have never picked up a tool in your life, or you're an intermediate woodworker that is looking to advance their skills, this is for you. If this sounds like it's something for you or someone that you know, you can learn all about it on my website, and I look forward to seeing you on the inside.